Hello, everyone, and welcome to the week ahead. This week, we are starting off with a strong Aries moon, along with our square of Venus to Jupiter. So today, that square perfected, and this isn't the last time that Venus and Jupiter are going to square each other. In fact, they'll do it 3 times in total. And the other 2 times will happen in conjunction with both of their retrograde cycles. So later on in the year, first when Jupiter is retrograde and when Venus is retrograde, and then when Jupiter is retrograde. So a part of whenever we see any aspect happening multiple times, like in a retrograde cycle where the planet goes back and forth over the same point multiple times, or when 2 planets have an aspect to one another, that indicates to me that there is this ongoing cycle process of evolution that, just like any book has a beginning, middle, and an end, goes through 3 phases of evolutionary process. With the retrograde, it's the beginning is that shadow period, and then the middle is the retrograde cycle, and the end is the direct period where the planet is moving back over the same degrees. And these are really powerful opportunities for us to integrate whatever the dynamic lesson is. And in this case, here we have Venus in the sign of Leo just before her retrograde degrees. And we have Jupiter in the sign of Taurus, ruled by Venus, and in its shadow degrees for its retrograde at this point. That Venus is ruling the North Node. So what is this asking us when this square is a crisis of consciousness? Or in a way, any crisis is a push towards change, right? We have to desire change. Human beings are creatures of habit. We will repeat the same things, especially, fixed signs, very, easy to get into a stagnant energy, easy to repeat the same routine over and over again, day after day. And the question is, what breaks up the routine? What challenges us to change out of our typical behavior into something that is ultimately moving us towards greater alignment with our desires, with our heart, with what we want? Well, it has to come through discomfort or crisis or change or expansion, right? Any of those modes of operating are ways in which change desires to come about. It's like the seed has to push its way up out of the ground, and then it becomes a sprout. And then as it sprouts, it extends itself, it expands itself. And that expansion then allows for additional growth and then new shoots, right? And those new shoots expand that even more. And with Jupiter in the sign of Taurus, the expansion is in the realm of our desires, our physical and financial security. The expansion can be in our embodiment. And one of the things that I've been asking myself is like, what am I not doing that I would be doing if I was living the life that I wanted to be living? Like, so wherever there's that discomfort of, oh, this isn't how I want to be living, or, a feeling of whether it's grief or disappointment, or like a longing for something to change in our life, something has to change in order for that to begin to blossom, in order for any shift. And it often comes through the messy and uncomfortable purification process. Now, if we look at what's happening with this square, on the other side of this square from Venus to Jupiter is Pluto, and Pluto is squaring the south node, and the resolution node is the south node. So for the Pluto square, the resolution node is the process of purification. Wherever we feel disempowered in our life, the process is releasing the past, releasing the hurt, the fears, the trauma, the triggers, facing the deep and uncomfortable process of cleaning out and clearing out and purifying our lives so that we can experience something new. And it's similar to the way that you have to clear things in order to create space for expansion. These squares are working simultaneous to one another, and they're working in support and in conjunction to one another. So Venus squaring the north node, the resolution is the north node. Pluto squaring the nodes, the resolution is the south node. They are working independently, but towards the same evolutionary trajectory. In this case, it's a good thing, right? Pluto is ruling the south node. We want all of that, the shadow, the darkness, the places where we feel to hide, where we feel hurt. We want to release that. And just the same way, if you realize that you were having toxins in your body, you would want to stop being and consuming toxic matter, right? I recently learned, we got this book in our house called the toxic superfoods or something like that. And it's all about oxalates, which are naturally found in certain plants, but that consumed in higher quantities are extremely toxic to the body. So a lot of these superfoods, which I eat every day, like spinach and chia seeds and all these different things, have these really toxic components, which then build up and are the cause of inflammation and kidney stones and all other sort of toxicity issues in the body. And so in finding this out and like learning about this, I'm starting to be aware of the things that I thought were super healthy in my diet. And there's a phenomenon with oxalates where if you stop eating foods that have oxalates in it, that your body will dump all of the oxalates that are in the system and then create more toxicity in the system. So you have to slowly downshift the amount of oxalate consumption to a regulated space in order to shift it in your body. And like a lot of people find that oxalates are what produce kidney stones. And I've always thought of kidney stones as being a Saturn thing. In this case, it's kind of a Pluto thing in a way, because here we have the buildup of something, and who knows in terms of its environmental impact, whether these things are sort of an ancient buildup of toxicity in our soils, and these are all plant foods that for the most part people consume in large part because they believe that they're really good for you. So anyway, that's part of this dynamic square, right? Is that we can discover or realize things that we're doing in our life which we thought were good for us, or we were engaged in something that is ultimately still deeply challenging to the system and has to be changed. But what it has to be changed in a way that is slow and sustainable. That expansion, if a plant starts to grow shoots and it becomes overgrown, it will fall over. You need to, like if you've ever grown tomato plants, as they get bigger and larger and more tomatoes, they become heavier, and some of them need props in order to really be able to thrive, right? So there is this energetic around cleaning and purifying our life. So anyway, I was starting to say, I've been asking myself the question of, well, what is it I'm not doing in my life that I would be doing if I was living the life I wanted to do? And I realized like my front yard was a mess, and it's, the winter leaves sort of compost piled all over the garden. And I'm like, well, if I owned this home, I would be tending the garden. If I felt like this was my home, there's some detachment from the life that I'm living right now because I'm wanting something else, to be living in a home, in more nature with a farm, and having a lifestyle that's different from where I am right now. But why am I not doing the thing that I would be doing in that life anyways, which is simply tending to the landscaping, the gardening, the tending of the yard? So I got out there today and did, what I could do to cleanse and purify the area. And of course, there's like composting, South Node, Scorpio, rotting material and shit and all this other stuff. And it felt so good to clean that and then go take a shower, and to accomplish bringing the land and the place to a state of beauty, right? That's an example of Venus in Leo squaring Jupiter in Taurus with Pluto squaring the South Node. All this energy working towards an ultimate purification process that is bringing me closer to the life that I desire, right? And so in our own lives, right now we get the benefit of this Aries moon, which is like a get shit done moon. I always feel like there's lots of energy, and this is a closing cycle of the moon. So we have tomorrow the moon applying to Chiron, and the Chiron and Aries journey is really about discovering that place within our own healing journey that has made us into a warrior, right? What is Aries? It's all about fighting, and it's Mars. And where is Mars? In Leo. This is about courage, right? To be ourselves, to use our drive and our desire and our energy for our healing. And eventually Mars is going to get to the point where it's makes this trine to, Mars trine Chiron. So that energy is facilitating a path of healing. But before we get there, the moon passes through that place. And I find it really interesting if you're tracking anything in astrology, especially if you're like, I don't know a lot about astrology. I don't understand all of this. The one thing I would encourage people to do is begin tracking the moon. And that's why I do the week ahead. I give you where the moon goes and we follow her journey through the week. And that's really the basis for where this, I'm channeling what I see in the chart and riffing off of what arises for me in terms of these aspects. But it always begins with the moon. That's why I start with the moon in her placement. And so as we're following her, we've got the sun in Gemini, and we have Mercury newly in the sign of Gemini. And Mercury has just entered Gemini today, Sunday. And the moon will move through a trine to Venus and then a trine to Mars, and then apply to Chiron tomorrow on Monday, and then move to the North Node. And I always love this particular time because it's kind of like reaping the harvest of the entire cycle around when the moon came through the North Node the last time. And if you remember, it was right after the new moon. Around the new moon time, we've had several lunations where the moon has, very close to the new moon time, passed through the North Node, Jupiter, and think of this as grooming and refining that area of growth and stability and presence, because we want to become solid in what we're growing, in what we're loving, in what we're tending. And anything that really is requiring our expansion, right? Jupiter is in this sign for a year, expanding what's here. Anything that's requiring our expansion is also going to require those little bits of infrastructure and tending, and it's going to require on some level us to rest and be slow. I can't tell you how many times I got the message this week to rest, how much the theme of rest and recuperation was a part of really being able to integrate expansion. And think about it. If you've ever done a ceremony, if you've ever run a marathon, if you've ever had a baby, if you've ever done anything that really required all of you, and I would say that the soul work of life of these times, if you're on a path of evolution, if you're really wanting to grow as a human being, if you're doing your work to heal trauma and to release the past, and if you're watching my channel, and you care about developing a life that you love, and you care about learning how to love others and love yourself in a much deeper way, and you care about making a difference in the world, that kind of expansion, that soul work that we're being called to, requires our rest and our integration. It requires us to slow down enough to learn how to regulate our nervous systems and to learn how to create an environment of sanctuary, of joy, of pleasure, but that is congruent with all the parts of us, not just, not just the shiny parts, and especially the most rejected parts of us, especially the parts that, in my state of non-rest this week, and I felt like so much challenging energy and really had a hard time sleeping for several days. In that time, I found that the amount of triggers and resentments and how challenging it was to be with my mind, like so much of that Pluto and Scorpio purification was just meeting that, holding space for, okay, these thoughts, these ways of feeling, this attitude towards this person, this way of dealing with my life isn't working. So let me meet it inside of myself. Let me not reject it. Let me see if there is healing here, if I can forgive or let go, or even just express, right, what is challenging for me, and allow myself to cry, allow myself to feel the anger, the frustration, the feelings. And that in and of itself does the work of releasing it through the South Node. And then the North Node work is, well, how do I want to feel? What do I want to do? Like, how do I make my home feel like a sanctuary, even if I don't own my own home yet? Like, even if I don't have the land that I want to be living on, I'm not yet homesteading my little family farm, in the way that I imagine. I certainly don't have the capacity for that right now with how full my life is. So something's got to shift, right? With expansion, we have to expand capacity, our capacity to receive, our capacity to hold more, with crisis, we have to face and see what is the opportunity here, what is inviting us to change. And so in these last few days, as we close this lunar cycle, really looking at how far you've come with your thoughts, looking at how much mental activity is being directed towards the new versus how much mental activity is being directed towards the past. If we're directing our mind towards the past, the best thing we can be doing about that is be going there for the purpose of releasing it, because it serves no one to carry it along with us. It's like carrying luggage with you with expired food in it, and everywhere you go, people are like, oh, that stinks. And why are your bags are so heavy? And why do you have all this stuff? And you're like, well, it was really good food. Yeah, at a time it was. Maybe there was something nourishing. Maybe there is something to take from what our experience or in the past, to hold on to the good memories and to hold on to the parts of our life. And sometimes we can only look back and see how far we've come. And there isn't a lot of other energy for like being able to see like, oh, that person has changed, right? We can't expect other people to change in our soul growth process. Sometimes it's a blessing that people change right along with us. And in other instances, we grow apart from people. And that is not, there's no blame or shame in that. It's just what is. Everyone is on a different evolutionary journey. I was saying to Ari the other day that like with certain words, you can have the same word mean many things at different levels of consciousness. It really just depends on what level you're thinking about it from. It's the same word. It doesn't, but the meaning changes based on who is speaking the word and what is being thought about it. And this is why attuning our minds to people who are speaking positive words, only focusing on the past for the purpose of digesting it, composting it, releasing it, reflecting upon it, gathering the lessons, the beauty, the fruits from it, and discarding the rest. And then we can move on and feel clear. Then we can move forward in our life and not feel confusion, because the confusion comes from being in a state of clutter, right? Whether it's mental clutter, whether it's too many thoughts or ideas, whether it's feels like my finger got a splinter, whether it's focusing too much on, I know that one of my biggest challenges in my life has been kind of getting pigeonholed into my own negative thinking, and how it takes a moment of insight, or it takes someone reflecting something really beautiful, or seeing myself differently, or uplifting myself. Like one of the reasons I go to church every Sunday is to have my heart uplifted. And the pastor of our church, before she gives the sermon, she's a former Broadway singer, and so she sings this little "Speak to us now, for we are listening." Anyway, I can't do it in the like beauty. I can't even capture the beauty of this woman's voice. When she starts to say these words, "Speak to us now, God, for we are listening," open our hearts and open our minds for us to hear what it is that you are here, what you are saying. And every time it gets me, it like cracks my heart open in a way that I can hear something that I needed to hear in order to uplift my heart. I mean, that's probably one of the reasons why I do this week ahead on Sunday, because it's like, I want to speak to you. Oh, here I'm going to cry. I want to speak to you about the week ahead in a way that opens your heart and lifts you into a way of seeing, what God is giving you, what life is giving you, what love is offering you, to work on, or to work through, or to be with, and the astrology is a way of reflecting that. It's a way of being able to articulate the power of our lives to be shaped moment by moment by the way that we choose to see the world, that's what Venus reflects, perception, and in this time while we're in Venus and Leo, we really have an oh man, I don't know why I'm still crying. We really have an opportunity to learn how to reflect the beauty of the heart, to learn how to reflect the beauty of our own hearts, because that intelligence, that wisdom, that view is the most powerful perspective that we can bring into our own life. That is the joyful, creative, life-affirming, childlike, genuine, caring space that creates love, And if we haven't felt that way in a long time, if we haven't felt childlike, I was thinking this week in my Love Evolution class, I was talking about the dynamic of these two nodal squares, and how if we grew up in a childhood where there was a lot of trauma, abuse, dysfunction in the family, the basic nourishment and care and protection wasn't present in our lives, there's going to be a deficit of those things, like a deficit of touch and a deficit of tenderness and a deficit of care and nourishment. And that can grow into our life to a point where it's like one can feel on some level really bankrupt, because at some point the amount of deficit of having love and care and tenderness in the life is beyond what could ever be repaid. In the what you file for bankruptcy when you get to the point where the amounts owed for credit cards or debts is beyond what can be repaid with your human expression, right? And what is the symbol of bankruptcy is like you go to the judge and they write it off and they charge off that debt and they say no more. And that's similar to this Pluto square, the South Node. It's like we have to say to the pain and the trauma and the oppression and the suppression of our beauty and of our love, no more. I am not going to live this way anymore. And charge off that deficit and begin through a process of Venus, Taurus, Leo, opening the heart, tending our garden, tending our body, tending our nervous system, learning how to express ourselves freely and be loving human beings in the world, and engage in actually giving love and sharing love and receiving love and reconnecting with our joy. That's the other side of the square. That's like we're doing one end of the repair, the output, releasing the deficit, charging off the past, saying no more debt, no more, and then cultivating the ground, cultivating the new, cultivating a sense of love and joy. And our strength comes from that cultivation, and our healing comes from that releasing, right? They're simultaneous. So as we close this week, we're going to close this new moon, and we get to this 26-degree new moon. It's ruled by Mercury in Gemini. This is going to be a really fun new moon. For those of you in my Evolution student membership, we will be working with Mercury and working in this dark time of the moon. We're going to be doing the new moon ceremony this week. And if you are not a member, you can sign up on my website. It's $11 a month. It includes a month ahead transmission where I go deep into the month. So I do that at the end of every month. And then it includes a new moon ceremony, and that will be this week. And you can join me live. I pray together with our community of my students and souls that are studying astrology. I tune in deeply to the new moon, and it's a way of really coming to prayer and practice and meditation and actually applying the energy of the new moon into the lunation. So please do feel free to join me. You can sign up for that membership on my website. There's information in the link below. And then right after that new moon, the sun, which has been traveling with Juno, conjoins with Juno, and then the moon moves into Cancer. And so we end this week on a Cancer moon. That first light of that Cancer moon, I think this is in particular when I would begin working with the energy of the moon. We're going to work in my new moon ceremony with the closing of that Mercury cycle. And I think it'll be a really powerful ceremony for clearing out the old stories and really coming into a new and fresh story about our lives. So thank you everyone for joining me. As always, if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If there's something that touches your heart in this, please share with me. I am always delighted by your comments and receive so much nourishment from the reciprocity of giving that comes through the words that you leave me. And as always, please subscribe if you haven't tuned in. I hope you'll join me for the new moon ceremony. And until next week, I will see you again, my friends. Take care. Bye for now.